Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. And, we've got a lot of great guests lined up for this year. And yet at the same time, I know that some of this key foundational information for you guys to pursue multiple streams of income, to work on building wealth, is really important to get to. So I wanted to make sure that I took some time at the beginning of the year to get some of that information out there. So the first episode of the year, right, we had the 6-step guide to buying an investment property. And then last week, our episode was talking about, sharing the first time doing a flip. And then today I wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of analyzing a deal, right? It's a huge part of picking investment properties. Which one should I choose? How do I go through that analysis? So I'm going to do my best for those folks that are listening to this on the podcast to be able to explain things to you, since you may not be able to see my screen. Otherwise, what I would do is encourage you, if you're not watching, go to our YouTube channel, Real Freedom. That's REL Freedom. And go check out this episode, and then you can see the screen share that I'm going to do here in a little bit, where we walk through some of the spreadsheets that we use and some of those details. And without further ado, we're going to get into the episode. So we had that 6-step guide of how to buy an investment property in 2022. Those 6 steps were: identify roadblocks, right? What's stopping me from getting into that property? Identifying objectives, analyzing the property, which we're going to cover today. Build your team, make your goals, and then ultimately make the jump. So I think what holds some people back is not really knowing what's a good deal. What do I do? How do I analyze it? Part of it, like I've said in the past, is getting in and getting something. And yet at the same time, you're tying up your money for a while. And so you want to make sure that the money that you tie up is going to hopefully make more money. So that's where sometimes we want to do a good, thorough analysis on that first property to make sure that this is going to be a property that sets up future properties. When I work with clients, I often tell them, I'm incentivized to do a good job for you to pick a great property, because if you're going to make money on this property, it's going to help you to buy more. There is a paralysis by analysis, which I'm accustomed to myself. My personality kind of lends towards that. And yet at the same time, you want to make a good analysis, because if you're putting down 20 or 25% on a poor investment or kind of an average investment, that's not going to allow you to make as much money in the future, because your money is just sucked up in this investment. So that's important. A podcast that I listen to that talks a lot about investment properties gives an example of, think about your investment portfolio, kind of a baseball analogy here, right? You've got a single, a double, a triple, and a home run. Now, a home run, or maybe even a grand slam, is going to be that awesome property that makes a ton of money, has a lot of appreciation. We don't always hit home runs, right? Home run is a rare thing. A grand slam's an even rarer thing. So focus on finding those good singles and doubles that you can continue to hit on to be able to build that portfolio. So I know there's awesome opportunities out there, but find those good singles and doubles, especially early on, so that you can build and grow your portfolio. The other thing, when it comes to analyzing properties, it's not as challenging as it may seem. If you get yourself a good analysis calculator, you could reach out to me. There's other ones out there that you can go find, but it's really just doing it. And after you do a handful of them, you're going to understand. And now for me, when properties come up in the MLS, typically every day I'm in there looking at new properties that have come on. I can tell, mostly on a snap judgment. I just know, based on the purchase price, based on the estimated rents, this isn't going to be a good fit, or how many utilities are included that the owner has to pay versus the tenant. Now I can find that out. Whereas when I first started, I had to take the time. So what was maybe a 10-minute process or a 15-minute process, now in most cases, I can tell within seconds of looking at it. And so you're kind of, think about it as a funnel. A lot of the stuff isn't going to work. You're kind of looking for what's the ones that I'm going to spend more of my time on, so then I can really hone in and make sure that those numbers are clean to ultimately put in an offer. And then after the inspection period, stick with that and move forward. So pick a good calculator, a good analysis tool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screens for those folks that are on the YouTube video. I have not reviewed these properties ahead of time because I want to be able to show you guys what that analysis looks like. And then I do have a couple of calculator tools. So these are just some multifamily properties that have come on the MLS in the past handful of days from when I'm recording this. I'm going to go through and just kind of show you how we make those numbers. But first off, I want to show you a couple calculators that I use. So here we've got a buy and hold calculator. And so I picked this up. You can see here, Agents Invest. If you've ever heard of them, you can go to their website and download their free calculator tool. That's the one that I'm using today that I'll just kind of show you a little bit of what's included on there. This is maybe a little bit more advanced than most people would want right out of the gate, but obviously we've got the asking price, what the suggested offer price is, down payment. If you're looking at kind of traditional financing, if it's a multifamily unit, you're going to be looking at paying 25% down. If it's a single family home that you're looking to acquire as an investment, you can usually get that for 20%. So this is kind of most traditional. Closing costs, you can estimate, whether it's 1 or 2%, what that might look like. So then obviously here we've got income, so rental income. And then on the side, you'll look at there's current rents and there's pro forma rent. So current rent is what is it being rented for today? Pro forma is what could it reasonably rent for in the future. And so you might want to look a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Obviously 10 years from now, it's going to look a lot different. But at the same time, you want to come up with, maybe it's not the best investment today, but after you have an opportunity to fix it up and maybe change that rent, there might be some new opportunities here. So, and then this calculator just has a little drop down menu so you can switch between the two, whichever one you want it to analyze. Vacancy rate, I would suggest looking at your state that you live in. It varies drastically across the United States. So looking at your state, looking at the type of properties that you might be interested in, what's a reasonable vacancy rate? Minnesota here, where we're at, vacancy rates are a lot lower. I think we're maybe the 5th or 6th lowest vacancy rate in the United States. And then monthly expenses, this would be landlord paid utilities. So looking at water, sewer, trash, gas, fuel. If there's any HOA dues, you want to put that in here. Annual operating expenses, you've got property taxes, of course, insurance. And then here we've got an annual CapEx budget, which you can plug in whatever number you like or whatever number you think. You can kind of go property by property, or just a nice clean number that you use to analyze all the properties. And then you can always drill down later. So we've got CapEx, maintenance budget, and property management. So that's going to depend on, are you hiring a property manager or are you looking to manage the property yourself? Those are the different annual expenses. And then you've got a grand total there. Looking at the property analysis, you can see how all those numbers run. Things that people like to focus on in terms of numbers, calculations that matter: the capitalization rate, monthly cash flow. Obviously, the annual cash flow kind of goes hand in hand with the monthly. And then this cash on cash return. And so the nice thing is the cash on cash return is looking at the actual cash that you're putting into the deal. What can you expect to earn back on that? So how much money is it tying up and what can you expect to get onto that return? It's also going to factor in a principal reduction. There's a mortgage calculator on a different spreadsheet where you can kind of see an amortization schedule. And then it's also going to factor in the appreciation. So appreciation is down here at the bottom. Depending on your market, some markets on the coast, the appreciation is crazy and it's tough to find great cash flow. Here in the Midwest, you can kind of get a little bit of both depending on where you're at. There are cities in the Midwest that are fantastic for cash flow, maybe not as much appreciation. And then in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities area and kind of surrounding, I'd say there's a good combination of cash flow gains as well as appreciation. And some neighborhoods are better than others. Some cities are better than others. We're just going to go ahead and I'm just going to show you a couple properties here just to see how this gets filled out. A little bit more of the quote unquote bread and butter for duplexes are in this 200 to 300 range. So I'm just going to pick one here. So here we've got a property where the list price is $275. You can see here taxes with assessments is $35.36. And then here it says homestead no. So that's important because if the property, at least in Minnesota here, we have, if it's homesteaded, that means it was previously owned by an owner occupant. And those taxes are going to be reduced because they got a tax break because it was a homestead property. So in this case, it shows that the property is already not homesteaded. And so then you as the new owner coming in, you're not going to see a big spike in those property taxes. So something important to check there, the difference between the homestead and the non-homestead is going to make a difference on your taxes. So that being said, here it gives you, not all of these show what the current rents are. And so I'll show you where you can go and analyze these. But here it looks like monthly rent is $9.95 in each unit. Then here they've also broken down what those expenses are. And so this is in the MLS. The average person without a license doesn't have access to this. So I can certainly be a resource for you. That's why real estate agents can be helpful, because they can get some of this information for you. And then you can clearly see here, it says, what's the owner expenses? You've got the taxes, the insurance, electric, and then maintenance, repair, and water and sewer. So we're not always going to know that information up hand. We're not always going to know how much it is. And so that's where you're going to develop some assumptions over time of what that could possibly be. But here they give us those numbers. Other things to think about is, you want to make sure that is water and sewer something that's paid for by the tenant. Some cities allow that, some don't. Some, based on how the house was set up, they might not have the electric or the fuel broken out by tenants. So it might be a lump sum that's paid for. So each unit is totally different. And that's where we've got a spreadsheet to help with those assumptions. So let's go ahead and just plug in some rough numbers here, and we'll just kind of give a sense of what that might look like. When we pop over to our tool, we can see 275 was the asking price. Multifamily will plan on 25% down. And then we can see current rents were $995, and we'll put in $995 here. And then the rental income is going to be based on current rents. Property taxes we had were $35.36. So we'll keep with that. Insurance estimates, that's up to you guys to figure out. Might be good to have a good relationship with an insurance agent to kind of get a plan for that. A lot of times we might see, it obviously depends on the area, it depends on the size. Something in this general range where I'm located might be about $1,500. So we'll just plug this in as assumption. I should say at the beginning, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm also not an insurance agent. And so please check with your professionals. This is not financial advice that I'm giving to you. So make sure that you check with those professionals. I'm just showing how to use a spreadsheet, and I'm plugging some numbers in here for you. But as you'll see, it's not too complicated as you get going. So we have those in. Landlord paid utilities. We can go back here and we can see, the estimate. So we've already got taxes and insurance accounted for. Maintenance and repair we've got accounted for. Water and sewer and electric is essentially what we need to plug in. We know that the total for electric here is $3,900. Water and sewer, a lot of times, maybe about $150 a month on a duplex is a reasonable number. It really just depends on the property. Insurance here, actually, they've got their insurance at $906. So we'll just plug in here $906. Ask for their insurance agent to see how you get $906 for your next quote. So we've got that. And then here for landlord paid utilities, we had $3,900. We know there's going to be something for water and sewer. So let's just plug in $450 here. So as you can see now, as we start to look at these numbers, we're in a negative cash flow situation. Now, I should say this is dependent on the interest rate, dependent on the loan points. That's going to be up to you and your lender to figure out what those assumptions are. I'm just putting in a clean 4% just so we can get an idea here. So you can see right now, this is in a negative cash flow situation. So what could we potentially do? One is we look at, okay, what's the rental potential? So you're going to dig in here. You're going to look at photos. You're going to look at, what can we possibly do to increase the quality of the unit, to maybe have some rents in the future that are a bit higher. So here we can go back and we'll see, it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath unit. So it's 2 and 1 in each unit, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. There's also a pet fee. Oh, actually here. So here we've got $35 pet fee, $50 water, trash, and reimbursement to the owner. And then it gives here when the lease expires. So you are collecting additional rent. So we could put that in. So one unit will bump up by $35. We also know we're getting $100 in water and trash reimbursement per month. So let's go back in and we'll adjust. So now we'll here go down to $350, factoring in that $50 per month reimbursement. And then this one actually had a $35 pet fee. So that's going to put us at 1030. And now the numbers are a little bit better, yet it's still in a negative cash flow position. So let's just say, and I'm not in any way saying that these are the potential rents for this unit, nor have we looked at pictures together. And I purposely did that because I don't want to make any promises, or that's a different episode that we can talk about. But let's just say, as an example, once we fix things up, maybe in a lot of cases these are tenants that have been there a long time, and we haven't had rent increases because they've been great, they communicate well, they pay on time, and you want to keep it low for them so they continue to stay there. Let's just say market rents might be $1,250, or even let's just say it could potentially be $1,300. So if we plugged in $1,250 in the pro forma rent section, and then we flip over the monthly income to a pro forma, now you can see that we're at a positive cash flow and a positive cash on cash return of 3.98%. So that just shows how I always tell people, I was a finance major, you can make numbers tell any story. You just have to now look at what's realistic here. And that's going to be part of that due diligence process. So you're obviously going to be renting out this unit for the future. And so while these might be the current units, they gave that, the leases are going to be up. If that's something where, the tenant wants to vacate the property, you've got an opportunity to come in and do some renovations and repairs. Or like I said, maybe the market rents are just higher and you don't have to do much to the unit. You can have the rents be higher for that next tenant. So this just kind of shows how those numbers can play out. Like I said, without looking at pictures, now you're at a monthly cash flow of 253 positive and cash on cash return of 3.98%. You've also got principal reduction, appreciation. I have 7% just as a nice clean number. So your total return on the investment here would be 33.97% based on year one. So like I said, that's not advice. You can choose if you feel like that's enough for you or not enough for you. So that's a great example. So now we can see, I'm just kind of picking two numbers here, the cash flow of 253, cash on cash return of 398. So let's go look at another example just to see how that compares. So we'll go back and we'll pull up a different property here. Pick this one in St. Paul for 285. So here we have taxes are actually pretty similar. There's an assessment balance. A lot of times the assessment balance, this particular property happens to be in St. Paul. A lot of times you'll see that assessment balance show up. It's actually the water that's being paid for. So let's go down and continue. Look, so this one's actually 3 beds, 2 baths. So there's one less bedroom. Head on down. So there's not any rents listed here. So we don't necessarily know what that looks like. We also don't know expenses are being paid for because that's not filled in. So now it's up to us to go take a look at some assumptions. So let's go back here. So we know we've got 285. We know we've got, let's just say 2757. And then we'll assume the assessment is probably water. So let's go back to our calculator. We've got 285. We'll plug that in. Rental income, we'll address that in a second. So in this case, let's just assume that the gas and the electric are paid for, and it is just water. A lot of times, like I said, maybe about $150 per month. Property taxes, $27.57. So we'll go back to that, $27.57. Insurance, let's just keep that the same just to see a comparable of what that looks like. Here for rents, so current rents, pro forma rents. If we have one bedroom, maybe we just say 1,000 instead of 1,250. And I'll show you in a second how we're going to address that piece. But you go back and we've got this filled in for pro forma, monthly cash flow positive 286, cash on cash return 4.35. So actually pretty comparable when you look at those same assumptions. Now, any number, and this is where I'm going to come back later and talk about the due diligence, any one of these assumptions could change, which is going to affect your numbers. So that's part of the process leading up to putting in the offer. And that's part of the process from when you have an accepted offer to if you have an inspection and some inspection contingencies. That's where you're really going to dig into these numbers deeper and make sure that that's a property that you want to move forward with. So, let's just say as an example, we do find a comparable property just so you can kind of see how these numbers change. We had that one of 250. Let's just say you found a property for 220 that had the same rents. So maybe it's not in quite as good a shape, but at the same time, the rents are the same. Well, now you find something for 220, those numbers change. Your cash flow is 519, cash on cash return of 1021. So that's where neighborhood by neighborhood, you want to check things out. So a lot of times people ask me, Mike, how do I know what to look at for rent? So I want to cover that quickly because here we're just kind of plugging numbers into a spreadsheet. There's a few places that I go. One is good old fashioned Craigslist, right? So a lot of times people like to put apartments for rent, housing for rent on Craigslist. And then because you get to see it on a map, it's a good way to kind of see, okay, what's reasonable for the area. So I'm just going to zoom in here. I just happen to have this up in St. Paul. So we'll just go and take a look at, what's available here. So we've got 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. So I'm going to go ahead and click, okay, here's one for 1180. Here's one for 1373. But once you click on them, you can get a sense for sometimes utilities. You got to kind of bring it back to apples comparison. But let's just assume these are the same, 1373 and 1180. So now I know, okay, that 1250 range maybe for a 2-bedroom is reasonable. Or if the high end here is 1375, I've got a property that's really nice. I could plug in 1375 for that. So lots of options there. So Craigslist is a good place to go. Another one that you'll see a lot of times people use is apartments.com. Once again, similarly, I just had this pulled up for St. Paul because I was just planning to show St. Paul. You can click on the pictures, find out is it comparable to mine or not. And then another one that folks use sometimes is Rentometer. So I just plugged in a property here as I had this tab ready to go, 2 beds, 1 bath. And then here, this is actually in South St. Paul. You can see it gives you an average, a median, and then some different percentiles. So that's a great way to see, what's a reasonable rent and what's something I could do. If you want, talk to a property manager as well. They've got some tools. They've got a great handle on what rents are. So that's how you feel comfortable about those rents. So that's the tool here. The other thing I'm just going to quickly show is the BRRR calculator. This is for people looking to flip a property, put in some money, put in some repairs. Oh, I should go back to the previous calculator. There is a spot where you can update renovations. So if you're thinking you're going to want to add, $10,000 to get it to the rents, this is kind of that current rent to pro forma rent discussion. If you want to put in 10,000 to get from current rents to pro forma, here's how those numbers change. You can do that. So there's a spot up here for renovations. All right. So going back to the BRRRR calculator, similar things. You've got your asking price. You've got your estimated renovation costs. You've got after repair value. So a lot of times with the BRRRR, the focus is what's that value going to be after I fix it up. Once again, a real estate agent can help you out with that to come up with a reasonable assumption because it's going to involve some sort of refinance that happens later. So you've got your monthly utility costs you plug in, you've got your down payment, you've got your interest rates. A lot of times on a BRRRR, your interest rate's going to be higher because you're buying it, fixing it up, and then going to refinance after the fact. And then you've got some refinance options, whether it's a 75%, 85%. There's different things along with that. Then what you're going to do on this BRRRR calculator is you've got what's going to be the projected income after the renovation. So I didn't pre-plan any of these numbers. This is just kind of how the tracker was set up. So you've got what's that income going to be? What do I think I can get? What are going to be my utility expected costs? Once again, the annual expected. So it's kind of the same thing as what you would see in the buy and hold calculator. The difference is you've just got the kind of the new financing options of what that could look like. And then you've got your cash on cash return and your total ROI. So that's a good estimate. I just wanted to show you guys those tools, how that works. And you can see I'm not a rocket scientist. I can take those numbers, I can plug them in and, give a good idea of that analysis. And you can see those cash flow month per month numbers change, the cash on cash return, the cap rate. Those are numbers that people look at. And so you could really see, I had a rental property that before I got into real estate, it's like, well, I don't really know if it's good or not. And so I rented it out and the cash flow was about even. Well, what if I sold that property and I picked a property where it had a higher cash flow? Like I said, I was in that property before I was into real estate, before I started tracking these tools. I didn't know any better. And so it probably negatively impacted my ability to purchase additional rental properties in the future because it wasn't that great of an investment. It was less than a single, I would say, in terms of cash flow for sure. Appreciation was okay. So it turned out okay. We made a profit at the end, but that's to show the value of understanding those numbers and what that could look like. So then what's going to happen is you find out those numbers. You've got one where I've got a decent cash flow. I've got a decent, cash on cash return. I'm looking at making an offer. And then, leading up to that, and then if your offer is the one accepted, you want to do that extra due diligence. You want to, if possible, look at the leases, confirm that the lease rates are exactly, if there's current leases in place, exactly what they said they are. Sometimes sellers make mistakes. Sometimes real estate agents make mistakes. And so you want to verify those numbers. The property tax numbers, you can go to the county websites and verify those numbers to make sure that it matches what they say it is. And then to ask for some sort of rent roll, if they could show utility bills to verify, if I'm paying for gas and electric for $200 a month, hey, do you have some bills that I could see just to verify that? Or could you show me your books for the past 12 months so that I can verify that? Because obviously $100 difference on the cash flow makes a big difference. If you're looking at something that's going to cash flow $300 or $400, the difference between $300 and $400, that's a big difference. And so you want to test those assumptions. Insurance, get a quote from an insurance agent to make sure if I'm plugging in $1,500 that it is that, and it's not going to be $2,500, and I'm going to lose about $100 a month on my insurance estimate. So that's where that due diligence period is really important. Before viewing a property, you can do kind of 90% of the heavy lifting from your computer to where you don't want to go to a property unless it's going to hit those certain assumptions. Other things that are out there, is there value add opportunities? Maybe converting a basement, you're going to finish off a basement, might turn a 2-bedroom into a 3-bedroom, something like that. Those are where you go look at those pro forma rents versus what the current rents are. So there's additional opportunities there. And then once you put in that offer, you think you've got all your numbers in, like I said, I highly recommend doing an inspection. You want to make sure that the property is as you say that it is. There's not a AC unit or a furnace that went out. There's not some plumbing issues that you didn't know about, because that's going to affect those renovation budgets. So, if you're kind of 90% of the way there at the time of the purchase agreement, you've come to a number that's pretty good. Go that last 10% during the inspection period, and then you've got everything in front of you to have that to move forward after the inspection period and have that closing. So like I said, I want to make sure that you guys, if you're interested in investing, if you're interested in building some multiple streams of income and building wealth, which is what the Real Freedom podcast is really about, I want to make sure that you have those tools in place. So that's why I did this episode. Thanks for taking the time to listen to that. If you have any questions about using those calculators or the assumptions or different things like that, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on our team's website, eliteadvantageteam.com, or, the links are listed in the podcast and on the YouTube page. So come find me, ask those questions. I want to help you out. I want to help you find great rental properties, connect you with great lenders, insurance adjusters, those types of insured agents, so that you can find a great property and hit a good single and a double that's going to set you up to build additional revenue and get some more properties in the future. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you guys later.